Hello and welcome to another edition of the Corner 3 here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. As always, I'm Cale Berger, joined by my co-host Chris Mueller, and it is our NBA preview show. The start of the 2019-2020 season is right upon us. It's going to be an exciting one, Chris. I think everyone's excited about it, and it seems like the league is maybe as wide open as it's been in quite some time.
Right, and it starts tonight. The NBA is no shortage of drama in the offseason. But
Never.
I think, now everything's building up and anticipating, and it's all coming to fruition tonight. You're right. The league is wide open this season. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of different teams. You don't know how they're going to mesh well together. You couldn't get more excited.
And when you look at last season, a little recap of what happened in 18-19. The Raptors defeated the Warriors in the NBA Finals in 6 games to get their first NBA title. Kawhi Leonard was the Finals MVP. Zion Williamson drafted number 1 overall out of Duke to the New Orleans Pelicans, who had just lost their star, Anthony Davis, to the Lakers. We also had Paul George traded to the Clippers. And in free agency, Kawhi Leonard to the Clippers, KD and Kyrie to the Nets, although Kevin Durant will miss this season, or pretty much the majority of it, is the assumption with that Achilles injury. But Kyrie goes to Brooklyn as well. Kemba Walker in Boston, and Jimmy Buckets, now a member of the Miami Heat. So it was certainly like it always is, a crazy offseason, a fun offseason, a lot of headlines, a lot of storylines, and it's created for a really exciting 2019-2020 season. If we look at some of the biggest storylines heading into this upcoming year, I think the first one we mentioned a little bit, the league is wide open for the first time in quite some time. It's not the Warriors and everyone else. It's not the Warriors and the Cavs or the Warriors and whoever LeBron's playing for. It seems to be more of a wide open NBA than we've had in maybe the last 8 years or so, and I think a lot of people are excited about and looking forward to this season. I'm calling it the year or the era of the dynamic duos.
Right.
Because if you look around the league, you have these, duos of players that it's created this kind of parity around the league that we haven't had in a while, and there's so many teams with a legitimate shot at the title. Whether it's the Clippers with PG and Kawhi, whether it's the Lakers with LeBron and Anthony Davis, you still have, Steph and
Russ and Harden,
Harden,
Steph and Clay.
Exactly.
When Clay gets back, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and Philly.
Kemba, you got Kemba, Jason Tatum, I guess.
If Jason Tatum
that is one
can take a step forward, you're right.
You have Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah.
That's kind of a joke there. That is a good one too, though.
Porzingis and Boban.
Exactly.
The big three.
So you have all of these different duos, and I think it's going to make for a really exciting year.
Oh no, I totally agree, and I think there's some balance across the board, which is what I like from conference to conference. In the East, you have a lot of unproven with the moving parts, but
sure.
Yeah, exactly. Dynamic duos, a little more than the big threes, because it used to be big three. It used to be like get that third piece in.
Yeah.
And then you've got a lot of young talent that is looking to kind of take that next step, which is what I'm looking forward to as most. And it starts in New Orleans.
Yeah, it starts in New Orleans. And little segue to our next topic, and that is news that came out yesterday, where Zion Williamson is going to miss 6 to 8 weeks with a knee injury. It was a torn meniscus. So big news with the number 1 overall pick going to be missing extended time. Might be 2 months out for Zion Williamson. And that puts this Pelicans team in kind of a weird situation, because they traded Anthony Davis. They got all this young talent from the Lakers to put around Zion Williamson. And he had high expectations for his rookie season. Given the injury, what are your expectations for Zion's rookie season? I certainly had high expectations for him before this injury.
Right.
I probably still do. A torn meniscus isn't the worst thing in the world, but he's going to miss maybe 2 months of the season.
Yeah, and I think they're just going to really bring him back slow, incorporate. They're going to play the long game. My expectations are still just as high. Meniscus, it's an injury you can return from. Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger tore it in the season, came back.
Yeah.
It's something you can do. And just watching Zion in the preseason, I think you can't have any expectations other than high. He was averaging 23 points a game, shooting 71%. You haven't seen rookies do that. Now, albeit it's preseason, you haven't seen rookies do that before. So I'd say once he gets back, maybe around the All-Star break is when we see him fully healthy. Maybe a little before that, or at least fully incorporated, transitioned into the league. You're really going to see why he was a stud at Duke and why he's the number 1 overall pick.
I think what my expectations were for Zion coming into the season, I thought he'd average above 15 points a game. I think he was going to average double-digit rebounders, because he's probably he's probably the best rebounder on that team, if we're being honest. I
Yes.
mean, even considering the bigs. I mean, he's so ferocious going after the basketball. He's so
Okafor is not a rebounder.
That's it. Oh, you know
Yeah.
that quite well as a
Yeah.
76ers fan. But even guys they drafted, I think he's clearly the best rebounder on that team. But what comes with Zion, his explosiveness, and I've talked about how he's such a massive individual. He comes in, he's the heaviest player in the NBA, coming in as a rookie, but he's so explosive. And the type of athleticism he shows, and the type of explosiveness he has, moving that kind of weight around, it's going to put wear and tear on his body. And that's my real concern with Zion going forward throughout his career. Can he stay at that 280 playing weight and play the type of basketball he wants to play? I'm not sure if he can.
No.
And I think the Pelicans are going to have to be very attentive to his fitness, attentive to just his overall weight, managing that stuff, because he's a guy that, just based on his body type, because when you have that type of body, you can put on pounds easily. And people might think that, you're playing in the NBA, you run around for 48 minutes a night as your job, you shouldn't be putting on weight. Well, it's not as easy as that sounds. And I think that's going to be something they're going to have to pay very close attention to, because if they don't, that's an area where little nagging injuries like this can kind of get out of hand. So my expectations for Zion, I think he's the favorite still to be Rookie of the Year. Yeah. This isn't a death sentence to his candidacy for Rookie of the Year. I think he can still come back, put on a show, grab the headlines, and be fine. He clearly has the hype coming in, but...
And that's an interesting point too. You bring up about the weight, because you look at all some of the stars in the league. LeBron cut weight as he got older.
Yeah.
If you've seen Draymond Green this season, he's
shredded.
He's shredded up, and I think just as nutrition has improved and dynamic over the years, technology, you see all these players kind of slimming down in order to longevity of their career. Now with Zion, it might have to be a little earlier than usual. I think also he's really going to need to develop again to how opposing teams start to guard him, because once they get film on him at the NBA level, you're not playing at Duke. He was playing some good competition, but at the same time, night in and night out, he wasn't going against NBA caliber bigs.
Exactly.
I think it's just how he adjusts, how the Pelicans coaching staff adjusts to his offensive game or his skill, like what he's doing in particular, is really going to tell how far he can get this season.
Well, the other big storyline coming into this season is it's the battle for LA. It's going to be the game here on opening night between the Clippers and the Lakers. And you look at the Lakers, they've had LeBron last season. Things didn't go as well as they wanted to. They missed the playoffs, but they added Anthony Davis in that blockbuster trade where they sent basically every asset they had to the Pelicans, who we were just discussing. And you look at the Clippers, and they signed Kawhi Leonard in free agency and paired him with Paul George, who they got in trade from the Thunder. Mm-hmm. So you have these two, like we said, dynamic duos, two great pairings in the City of Angels. My question is, who do we think is the better team in LA? Personally, I think that the better team... I've kind of gone back and forth. This is pretty tough, because I think both teams have great rosters, but I think both teams also have some key deficiencies.
Right.
And I think the entire offseason I was saying to myself, well, I think it's the Clippers. It's the Clippers. They made the playoffs last year, obviously. But as I look more and more at what they're gonna do and what kind of issues they're gonna have in terms of the Clippers, I'm starting to think that it might be the Lakers that have the better roster. And I wasn't a guy that was very happy with the way the Lakers put their roster together in free agency and the guys they signed and put around LeBron and Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
But I look at that Clippers roster, and if we're just talking about who has, I guess, the bigger areas of weakness here, I look at that Clippers roster and I think they are going to get abused on the low block and on the boards by any of the bigs in the league.
Exactly.
If they get a matchup against the Sixers, if they get a matchup against really anybody, they're going to get pounded down low. And I'm no disrespect to Montrezl Harrell, because I think he's a good player in the NBA, but he's only 6'8".
Right. And I see kind of something they do where what the Toronto Raptors did last season, and acquiring Gasol before the trade deadline and making that run. And you look, they get to the finals, they win it all. I see what you're saying. Starting off, they have some concerns down low, big wise.
But the Lakers have problems too.
Exactly. And, with the Clippers, I just think Paul George, now he's not going to start the season. He's not healthy. He got double shoulder surgery, which I don't know how that works. You kind of both arms in a sling. But,
I guess.
So he's supposed to be ready by November. So it's kind of the same thing. It's a wait and see with them. He's gonna need to mesh with Kawhi.
Yeah.
But I just like that roster in terms of Pat Bev, Lou Williams coming coming off the bench, Kawhi, Paul George. When I see that, and then I look at the Lakers roster, which is, as you said, I didn't like how they handled it either. They just put a bunch of Band-Aids on and veterans and
exactly
in terms of around. Now, I mean, they had to make up for Kawhi. They didn't get Kawhi, and then they had to, Rob Pelinka just was reeling. But Danny Green, a veteran, an aging veteran. Dwight Howard wasn't even supposed to be on the team if it wasn't for DeMarcus Cousins leaving.
Exactly.
From what I saw in Dwight in Washington and Charlotte, I'm not a fan of that move. And even LeBron and AD, they're injury prone. I'd say as they get older, Anthony Davis had some injury issues in New Orleans, and LeBron, he's just a year older. He had his first kind of major injury last season a little bit. Overall, I think Clippers, when it all said and done, are going to be the team to emerge.
Yeah, and if I could just kind of play devil's advocate here for the Clippers, because I do like Patrick Beverley. I like Lou Williams. I mean, Lou Williams, he's six man. He's the best six man in the league.
Only Patrick one who's won it like multiple times.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. But you also look at the bench, and a guy like Landry Shamet, who's a knockdown shooter. Guys that can space the floor like that. I like what they have. Mm-hmm. My real concern with them, like I said, is down low. Yeah. But I look at the Lakers, and although what I was saying all along was that if they would have just used all that Kawhi money and spent it on the better free agents that were available, the better free agent role players, I think they would have been better off. They waited for Kawhi and ended up ultimately didn't get him. But when I look at the Lakers now, I think that there's some guys in there that I think Rondo will be good for Anthony Davis, especially. Another distributor outside of LeBron, I think, will be good for them. I do like Danny Green. He's got championship pedigree. He's also a guy that can knock down a three-point shot. And I like what JaVale McGee brings to the table as a shot blocker. I think Dwight Howard, honestly, although he didn't necessarily, didn't pan out.
I mean, remember his first stint in LA? No, I know what you're saying.
I know he didn't pan out necessarily in his last few stops, but, just a few years ago, he was averaging 16 points a game for the Hornets in 17-18.
But was he playing with LeBron? Who is the ultimate, like, in terms of being a teammate? I just think their personalities are on the opposite end of the spectrum. And is he going to be able to respond to when LeBron tells him what to do? That's something that...
You're right. But when I look at Dwight Howard, 2 years ago, he played 81 games in Charlotte. He averaged 16 points a game. He averaged 12 and a half rebounds. So I think that's a guy just 2 years removed from that I'm not saying Dwight Howard needs to be their starting center, because he should not be, by far. Yeah. But I think Dwight Howard can be a guy that, off the bench, can provide a great spark. He can still block shots, and I think he can provide some energy for them off the bench, and I think that's exactly what they need. And the one guy we're not talking about, Kyle Kuzma.
Okay. Yeah.
And Kyle Kuzma is the guy who I feel like people seem to keep forgetting about, but Kyle Kuzma is one of the best young players in the league, and I think is the perfect kind of running mate besides LeBron and AD. I think the biggest problem, though, with that Lakers team is, outside of LeBron, who's the other playmaker that can get a bucket, that can get thrown shot? We look at Kyle Kuzma. He's a small forward, power forward. He's probably more of a power forward than a small forward. Right. He's not a guy you're necessarily running your offense through with the ball in his hands.
And I know Avery Bradley's been turning heads in training camp and preseason. Yeah. He's someone who can at least get to the rim, create his own shot. And
a good defender.
Yeah, and he's a good defender. And I know they've been running LeBron at point a little bit. So we might see something he's done a little bit, but not, overall.
I definitely...
I think that offense is kind of wait and see, or it's something that we might not have seen from them before.
I definitely don't think they're done making moves, though.
Yeah, they could be a trade deadline team.
Yeah, for sure. So the other big move that happened is after Paul George went to the Clippers, we saw the Thunder go into full rebuild mode and decided to shop Russell Westbrook to the Houston Rockets, reuniting him with James Harden. My question is, can these two coexist in Houston? We saw Harden and Chris Paul didn't necessarily work out over the last few years. They won a lot of games, but they didn't ultimately win it all. Can two former MVPs, two guys that have won the MVP in the last, 3 years or so, can they coexist and play together?
I think they want to. I think they're committed to, so I think it can happen. But would I be surprised if it didn't? I mean, everyone will. They're going to have to switch up how, they approach the game offensively. There's no more... but Harden is the best ISO, shoot, just create his own shot guy probably ever in the league. So you can't really ask him to stop. I think it's going to be on Westbrook if he's really going to switch his game, be more of a facilitator. Mike D'Antoni's job is on the line, I think. For it. They fired all his assistants in the offseason, and I think so. He's going to try to come up with a formula, how to incorporate both of them, how to get the most out of both of them with still playing within that team game. So if my gut went to it, yeah, I think that they're both committed. They both want a championship, but it could really go either way.
I think what concerns me is I think they can play together, like you said, but I think it's a big if. And it's a big question mark because what I think those two need to do is they're both two of the most ball-dominant players we've seen maybe in NBA history. Exactly. You know, you look at their usage rates in their NBA seasons, and they're up there. They skyrocket above everyone else. They're ridiculous. They have to have the ball in their hands. My problem with Westbrook is not nearly the shooter I think you need in that Mike D'Antoni offense, but we know he's an all-time talent. He's one of the most athletic players in NBA history. He's a highlight waiting to happen. My thing is, I think if they play their cards right, and this is a big if Russell Westbrook and James Harden want to buy into this, I think the big if is if James Harden will commit to playing off the ball at times. Because I think if you put the ball in Russell Westbrook's hands and let James Harden at times turn into more of a catch and shoot kind of guy, get him some shorter corner threes that he can knock down, get him off of, running through screens. Basically, let James Harden play the way we've seen Steph Curry play over the last 3 years at times when Kevin Durant was on the Warriors. Yeah. They put the ball in Durant's hands and let Steph Curry basically just outrun guys, do a bunch of screens, and catch and shoot, which is something that Steph Curry is incredibly good at, but we never see him do it because he's got the ball in his hands.
Right.
So I think if they work out where James Harden's willing to do more of that, I think it would benefit him. I think it would benefit the team, and I think it would kind of neutralize some of Russell Westbrook's deficiencies because if they try to do that the other way around and just make James Harden the facilitator the majority of the time and make Russell Westbrook catch and shoot threes, it's going to be a train wreck. Because we've seen that he's not able to do that. So I think that if they make a commitment to that and James Harden is willing to change up his game a little bit or change up his role in some way, I think this can really work. And I think the biggest guy that benefits from this addition of Russell Westbrook as well is Clint Capella. Because we've seen the type of progress that Steven Adams has made over the last few years where Russell Westbrook was averaging these triple-doubles over the last 3 seasons. Steven Adams has turned into one of the best centers in the league and really benefited from that, whether it was lobs or getting the ball on the post or dump-offs from Westbrook when he's driving into the lane. I think Clint Capella is a guy that probably more athletic, probably more lengthy, and Steven Adams is a guy that's really going to benefit in that situation.
The one concern I have with the Rockets outside of that, you have Westbrook and Harden, but depth-wise, they're really thin, and if all what happens if Clint Capella gets into foul trouble? I mean, you have Tyson Chandler at center, Nene. Other than that, Ryan Anderson, your bench is not.
I cannot believe Ryan Anderson's still on that team.
Exactly, and you can't go to him. So PJ Tucker on the wing is really there. That's the one thing I'd say concerns me. You have the star power, you have the production offensively. Russell Westbrook is good to great defensively too.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you need a bench to get far in especially the Western Conference playoffs. They don't really have that right now.
Exactly. So that's going to be their big issue. But they still have Eric Gordon. They still have PJ Tucker, like you said. I like Capella. Austin Rivers was serviceable for them. So I don't think that I think they have a good roster. They could certainly use more depth, like you said.
Especially in the front court.
Exactly. But that's what they have to do. They have to make that work, that pairing. And I think there's a potential that it could. The other bit, as we've looked at the Western Conference here, want to switch over to the East now, and I feel like all of the attention has been out West, like it seems to always be in the NBA, or at least the last 15 years or so. We look back East, and it's kind of a wide open as well, where you have the Bucks who, are kind of, I think, the biggest favorite this year to come out of the Eastern Conference, but there's a lot of teams. You have the Sixers, you have the Celtics. There's a lot of teams that have a case that they think they can get to the NBA Finals and face whoever comes out of the West. My question is, who do we think is the best team in the East? Who is the team to beat? I personally think it is the Bucks. They have the reigning MVP in Giannis Antetokounmpo. They re-signed Chris Middleton. They brought back Brook Lopez. They have a lot of pieces that I like. They were the number 1 seed in the East last year. So
across the whole NBA.
Exactly. So they had the best record in the NBA. So in that vein, I see them as the team to beat. I think having the best player in the Eastern Conference also makes them that. But I don't think the Sixers are far behind. I don't think the Celtics are far behind, who I think will be much improved with Kemba Walker in there filling the Kyrie Irving role.
Yeah, I mean, I see Bucks number 1 without a doubt, and they even stole Kyle Korver late, which gives them some
a great addition as well.
3-point shooting on the wing when teams are collapsing down to Giannis. So I'd go them number 1. They 30 NBA GMs were polled as to who would get the final, who would win the finals. Clippers were 1, Bucks were 2, 46%, 36%. So I'd say out of the East, it's the Bucks. Sixers second. As much as it pains me to say that, being a Philly guy, Philly suburb, grew up, but I'd say Sixers 2. It's really going to depend on how Ben Simmons, if he's developed that shot, if he can shoot from the 3-point range, then it's going to open things up for Embiid down low. And then also, I'm not as high on the Celtics as you are. I think Miami can make a run for that number 3 spot.
I was going to say Miami as well.
I think the Celtics, I don't think they improved. Outside of the Kemba for Kyrie thing, I obviously love, but otherwise they lost Al Horford and replaced him with Enes Kanter and then some backup centers, backup power forwards who I don't see. I don't see them really recovering for Al Horford's loss. Jason Tatum, he needs to take a step forward, as I said earlier, or else I'm just not that high on them. Kemba, his pick and roll game, he was great in Charlotte for a losing team. It's gonna be interesting to see how Brad Stevens meshes his pick and roll game into the Celtics offense, which traditionally was not that.
Well, I definitely think they're gonna miss Al Horford, not only what he provided on the offense and his versatility there, because he wasn't just a rebounder. He was a guy who could knock down a perimeter shot. He could facilitate as well. I think the biggest thing, but also defensively, is how versatile he is on the defensive side. But I think the other thing we're kind of discounting here with the Celtics is they still have Gordon Hayward, and we saw Gordon Hayward start to look like the Gordon Hayward of old last year, but it's really the year after one of those horrific injuries that a player really finds his footing again, really gets back to himself. With Paul George, when he had that injury in the USA basketball scrimmage, it took him about the second season after that injury to really, kind of get back to the player we all knew and loved.
Yeah.
So I think we see Gordon Hayward now coming into his second season removed from that injury, and I think that's going to be really big for the Celtics, that we're going to see the Gordon Hayward of old. We're going to see him, knocking down perimeter shots, getting to the rim. He's going to have some of that explosiveness back he showed, the craftiness as well. So I think that's going to be a big factor for the Celtics is, there's not going to be as much pressure on Jason Tatum you need to make the jump right now. You need to be our leading scorer right now. Although he has the potential to do that.
I just think he needs to take pressure off Kemba.
Exactly.
In the backcourt because,
I think that Gordon Hayward is...
We saw
really
spurts of that last.
We did.
Towards the end of last season, we saw him coming back into his own, defensively especially. I feel, and in the preseason.
And I think the big thing too for the Celtics is there's less mouths to feed. As much as you don't like to lose Al Horford, you don't like to lose, Terry Rozier, who's a very serviceable backup point guard for them. Yep. Now with the Charlotte Hornets, you lose Kyrie, who is a better player than Kemba Walker. Right. Maybe not the best player for this iteration of the Celtics right now. I think there's going to be it's easier for this team to gel now because there's less kind of abrasive personalities.
Yeah.
There's less mouths to feed in terms of getting touches on offense, which I think all bodes well for this team. And I think that they have a good core right now, in a good team that's been put together with enforcers in Marcus Smart and Enes Kanter, but you have guys that can score the basketball in Kemba, in Hayward, and you still have a guy like Jaylen Brown who just signed the big deal the other day, a big extension, which that's a whole other story.
Right.
I
wasn't
not a fan of it necessarily, but I think he's still a good player.
Yeah,
that can help them a lot.
I mean, you did hear Al Horford said it in kind of interviews in training camp. There were issues in that locker room.
Yeah,
Kyrie
absolutely.
was an issue, and even Kyrie admits that he wished he handled it differently. So I think removed from that, you're right. The Celtics will be a little bit back. Do I think they're the number 3 team in the East? No. Do I think I'd say maybe like a 4 or a 5. I just don't see them improving drastically to where they're on the same level as the Bucks and Sixers.
Exactly. Definitely. So our last kind of storyline here I want to touch on, or before we get into our predictions and stuff for the NBA season, which I'm really excited to hear, want to look at maybe who we think is a dark horse candidate to reach the NBA Finals. Because as we talked about, it's so wide open. There are still some favorites, but a team that we're maybe, I guess, think can come out of nowhere and kind of get to the NBA Finals. I know what mine is, and it's weird calling this a dark horse candidate because they've been so dominant over the last 6 years or so. But I think everyone's really forgetting about the Golden State Warriors. This is a team that, yes, lost Kevin Durant. Yes, has Klay Thompson out probably until, sometime in March maybe. I mean, he apparently is making really great progress on that torn ACL that he suffered in the finals. But he's a guy that is getting healthy and can be back this season. But they have Steph Curry still. They added D'Angelo Russell this offseason, who I think is a fantastic add for them and one of the best young players in the league. They still have Draymond Green, who you said slimmed down. They've added some great depth as well on their bench. You look at they added Omari Spellman, the center from Villanova, who I think is going to be big for them.
Yeah.
They drafted Jordan Poole out of Michigan, who I think is going to be a good offensive guy on the bench. They got another center in Willie Cauley-Stein. It seems like every year they get these JaVale
McGee types.
Yes, these projects, I guess you could say in a word. Guys that are trying to turn around their career.
Lost sheep.
They added Willie Cauley-Stein, who I think is going to do exactly what they need. What they had JaVale McGee do, what they had all of these guys do, just block shots, get rebounds, and have energy. And that's exactly what he's going to do for them. So I think there's a lot of really interesting pieces on this Warriors team. Added Alec Burks as well, a nice shooter in his 8th season. So I think the Warriors are really a team that, for me, is probably the dark horse candidate to get back to the finals because they have it in their DNA. They still have Steve Kerr. They still have Steph Curry. They still have all these guys who have done it before.
It's just going to be interesting to see if Steph Curry can go back to that guy of getting others involved, really.
Yeah.
As he was before KD. Can he do that? He's a little older, but he's still in his prime. I'm not saying he can't. I think that's really going to be a key component, and Draymond, just see his evolution. It's just it's like they're going back to the old Golden State, in terms of when Kevin Durant wasn't there, and just their efficiency on offense. D'Angelo, how do you see that fit? It's just a lot of people were kind of questioning it when the move happened.
So I like it, and I know D'Angelo Russell is not necessarily the best defender. Neither is Steph Curry. That'll be fixed once Klay Thompson inevitably gets back. They'll have a defensive guy back lineup. But I see them in the playoffs because I think they'll get back to the playoffs easily in the West.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a kind of a lineup somewhat of probably D'Angelo Russell at the 2, Steph at the 1, D'Angelo at the 2. It will be Klay at the 3, Draymond at the 4, and then whoever at the 5 kind of thing. Actually, the other big loss, though, is Andre Iguodala, who's no longer on the team either. But I think this, like we talked about with Houston, gives an opportunity for Steph Curry to play off the ball where he's always so dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think that D'Angelo Russell could do that as well. He's a good shooter from outside also. But I think what they're going to do, especially earlier on in the season, kind of stagger those guys' minutes. They're going to play them in the starting lineup together, but we're not going to see a ton necessarily in the grand scheme of things over an entire NBA game of Steph Curry and D'Angelo Russell playing on the court at the same time.
Yeah.
They're going to try and stagger those guys because they do have, in a way, similar skill sets. They have to have the balls, or they're best with the balls in their hands. And I think they want to use D'Angelo Russell in a way that, when Steph goes out of the game, they can kind of leave him in there to create offense and bring along this. It was a pretty inexperienced and a younger group of reserves on this team.
Yeah.
That's what I anticipate them.
No, I see that. They could certainly, coming out of the West, it's going to be tough at least to advance, in terms of, conference finals there. But I'm going with my dark horse, the Utah Jazz. I really like, another team that has been regular season-wise traditionally very good. They just haven't been able to take that step in the playoffs. I think I really like the addition of Mike Conley, over Ricky Rubio. He's someone who can create his own shot, which, Ricky was more of a facilitator, couldn't do that as well. Create his own shot. He's a savvy vet. You pair him with Donovan Mitchell. You pair him with Rudy Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And, some of the other guys on their roster, they got Joe Ingles, who, can knock down shots. I just see them as, the Mike Conley addition from the leadership standpoint, too, is being able to kind of push them if they can get a good seed and get home court advantage in the Western Conference playoffs. And Bojan Bogdanovic, that's another guy.
Well, that was the other thing. I think Bojan Bogdanovic, is a guy who, when you saw Victor Oladipo go down for the Pacers last year, Bogdanovic had a career year and really was able to cash in. Yeah. I mean, you look at his last season with the Pacers, 18 points. He shot from the field, 42.5% from the field. I mean, he really had a great year, just shot around 50%.
Right.
I mean, he was really phenomenal and basically took over the reins of the offense for the Pacers when Oladipo went down. So I think that's one of the most underrated, signings of the offseason was them adding Bogdanovic because they're just so lengthy and they can beat you in so many different ways. They got guys on offense now. They're going to still be great defensively with Mike Conley, with Joe Ingles, with Donovan Mitchell, obviously with Gobert, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year.
Right.
I think that they're scary in the Western Conference because they can beat you in so many different ways.
And I think they were a great team last year that only got better.
They were.
So that's why I just say
they didn't really lose anything.
Yeah, that's why, because everyone's focusing on the duos, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Rockets, but in terms of a complete team, I'd say the Utah Jazz are up there with everyone, as are the Denver Nuggets, which is another similar team that I'd say.
Definitely. So those are some of the big headlines heading into the season. And before we get to our predictions, because I want to get all of our picks for who's going to the finals, who's going to win it all, who's going to be the MVP, defensive, all that kind of stuff. Want to do our segments every week. We're going to go back to our tweets of the week and also introduce our new segment, Kicks of the Week, some of the best on-court fashion we've seen so far the past week. Still in the preseason now, but there's still been some great stuff. But it is time for our tweet of the week. And, Chris, we're going to start with yours. One that I really like here. Explain to me this image from Eric Rosenthal.
Yes.
Luka and Boban.
Really, Boban, I'm here for
reality show, please.
Yes, I mean, Boban lost Tobias Harris, his best friend.
Toby and Bobby will be missed.
I
need to find that on a T-shirt.
Oh, I know. It has to be out there.
I'd buy
for the videos. But now insert Bobby and Luka and Porzingis, who's not pictured. But, I mean, if you go to that tweet, it's a video of Bobby just being like the older brother. Just being his weird self. And this is week number 2 that we had Bobby in the
I was going to say, this is the second week in a row we've highlighted.
But how can you not?
He's going to be us.
He's not in that onesie this time, but I mean, I just think
giant blanket.
I'm here for this duo all season long. So
Definitely.
That's my tweet of the week.
All right, my tweet of the week is something that I think might have been late last week, but certainly since our last show we did, which is our Pitt basketball preview. Check that out if you haven't already. Season is still just around the corner. My tweet of the week is something new in the NBA this year. They are making teams put the exact heights of their players, okay? And that's the big thing is, always kind of a debate is how guys are listed in the NBA, what their actual height is. One of the big stories is Kevin Garnett was always listed at 6'11", not his probably actual 7'1" or so because he didn't want to play center. So he made sure that he was listed at 6'11", so he would play power forward and not center.
Yeah.
One of the weird, crazy kind of height things or height conspiracies in the NBA. But you look at some of these heights here, and, Dwight Howard, a guy who's considered to be a legit 7-footer for most of his career, clocking in at 6'9" and 7.75 when he was 6'11" last season.
Yeah.
You look at Anthony Davis, he comes in as the same height as Dwight Howard when he was listed at 6'11". LeBron listed about half an inch more than he already was. Not big of a difference there. Kevin Durant, he's a little taller than his 6'9" he was listed at. But here's a big one. Klay Thompson, 2 whole inches shorter at 6'5" as opposed to the 6'7" he was listed as last year. So I think that's going to be interesting as the season goes on. You look at some of these actual, the rosters of some of these teams, and I think it's going to be interesting to see, this guy's 4 inches shorter than he was listed last season. I think that's going to be something that's, because it's always been a kind of conspiracy in the NBA, dating back to whenever.
I used to do it when I was in high school. So
we all do it, for sure.
Like, nah,
and you raise the traps a little bit.
But I wonder what Earl Boykins was.
Yeah.
In reality, if he were here today, because he was listed, I think, at like 5'5".
I'm curious what Isaiah Thomas is. This modern Isaiah Thomas.
Modern day,
because he's recognized as probably the shortest player in the NBA, but right now, but he's probably not 5. He's even shorter than 5'9", probably.
Yeah.
So, new segment is our Kicks of the Week, and every week we're going to look at some of the best on-court fashion in terms of footwear that we've seen over the past week between episodes of The Corner 3, whether it's college, whether it's NBA, any of it. We're going to highlight it here on the show. So on our first edition of Kicks of the Week, Chris, explain to me your kicks that you chose for this week's initial segment.
I'm not going with as much as a flashy kick, even though it is a pretty nice shoe. I'm going with one that was sturdy. In terms of Zion Williamson's shoe, it did not rip like it did at Duke. Throughout the preseason, we got that Air Jordan. If you want to slide to the next one, it's a deeper... no, we don't have that.
Yeah.
But no, I'd say just Zion's shoe.
You can see in the top right there.
Yeah, top right, did not rip. It stayed on his feet, didn't mess up his knees, so
Well, we don't know that.
Good.
Let's not assume. We don't know.
That might
It
have
played
been
a
the
role.
reason. No, I think it's his weight more of what we're talking about.
Exactly.
But yeah, so they didn't have that scare. Jordan didn't have a PR nightmare yet.
But interesting, we were interested to see who he would end up with. In terms of the shoe sweepstakes for Zion, and ended up being Jordan Brand.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought Nike, technically still is Nike.
Yeah.
But he ended up signing with Jordan Brand, which I think is cool for Zion Williamson.
Yeah.
My Kicks of the week are going to be actually a guy we talked about a little on the show. Might talk about a little later. A little tease for you is Stephen Curry. Kicks that he pulled out the other night in a preseason game against the Lakers. These are I believe they're the Curry 5s. I think they're his most recent shoe. But these were designed by his daughter, Riley Curry. They gave her a blank piece of paper, you can see there in the bottom left, and told her, draw something. And they were going to make it into a shoe, and I think it was very cool, a very cool design. And I think that's something that even if, sneaker companies want to implement just for everyday consumers. You see the Nike ID, but it's like, all right, you can pick this color. But if you could implement a graphic or design something, I think that'd be really cool. If the sneaker companies themselves got into that market. But you see Riley Curry came up with a cheetah print Curry 5 shoe, and he was wearing that in the preseason. I think that's a sharp shoe.
Yeah, and we're probably going to see other NBA players do that, and then there's a little rivalry about whose kid it's designing the best shoes.
Yeah, we'll see.
Riley Curry was the OG.
And somehow PJ Tucker, who we're probably going to have a lot on this segment this year, is definitely going to have everyone's children's shoes that they've designed in some way because he has the best shoes in the NBA, as we all know.
Hot take right there.
Oh, it's not a hot take. It's an unquestioned fact that PJ Tucker is the sneaker king of the NBA. Looking at our predictions now. Time to make some bold predictions that you can all come back at us on Twitter at the end of the season, make fun of us, ridicule us, tell us why we were incredibly wrong. We're definitely going to catch on that before any of you do. We'll admit when we get something incorrect, but want to go through our predictions now. Who we think is going to be the award winners, who's going to go to the finals, who's going to ultimately win it all when it comes to June. But first award I want to talk about, Chris, Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Who are you thinking to be the Defensive Player of the Year this year?
I'm going with someone out of the city of brotherly love, and not just because I'm a Sixers supporter. I just think Joel Embiid is going to take that next step towards being NBA Defensive Player of the Year. He came out and said he wants to be MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. Don't see the MVP mark, but I think that the pairing with Al Horford is going to force teams really just right into the lion's den in terms of Embiid getting block shots and just being that presence down low. I think he's in better shape this season. He's lost some weight. He's going to be on the court more. So Defensive Player of the Year, Embiid.
I like Embiid. Embiid, obviously, a physical presence down low. I'm going to have a guy who's going to repeat. I'm going to have it be Rudy Gobert again. Okay. I think he's just, right now, probably the best shot blocker in the league. He has such great anticipation. He's a force down low. You saw how much of an impact he had in the World Cup over in I believe it was in China this summer, the World Cup, where there's no goaltending in international basketball. And so he was just demoralizing people, just grabbing shots out of the midair, scooping it out of the rim. Yeah. It was ridiculous. But he's such a physical presence down low. He's such a great shot blocker, and I think he's going to even better with the players around him. He's going to have less to worry about, but I think it's going to give him more opportunities to kind of gamble on defense and get some block shots. So I'm going to say Rudy Gobert. If we're talking about a dark horse candidate, though, I think one guy is Miles Turner of the Pacers. Okay. He's turned into a great shot blocker, a young center. I think Miles Turner's a guy that could also, wouldn't be surprised if he was Defensive Player of the Year. Okay. Second award here, Rookie of the Year. This is an interesting one. Unanimously people would pick Zion Williamson. Even out 2 months, I still think it's going to be Zion. Yeah, I think he's just going to, he's going to show just how dominant he is, how much of a freak athlete he is, how polished his game is. Even in some of the preseason stuff, he's beginning to the rim at will.
71% shooting.
Yeah, it's been ridiculous.
That's pretty crazy for your first 4 NBA games.
And we talked about how maybe that injury might have some negative effect on his candidacy for that. I don't think it's going to have much of an issue. I think he's going to come in and automatically, no matter when he comes back, he's going to draw the headlines. He's going to draw the attention. I think he's going to win it. Okay. We're in agreement on that. Yeah. Do you have a potential guy as a dark horse?
I'd say R.J. Barrett. I kind of like him.
Naturally.
Yeah.
In New York.
Yeah, New York. He's going to be the man.
And I think,
not a lot around
well, that's the
him.
thing. I think the big thing is
get a lot of shots.
I think the big thing is also, is the guy going to be the man? Are they going to give him the ball? Is he going to be leading the team?
Yeah. I think he's going to develop into that. Who else would you say is really going to be the man up there?
No one.
Exactly.
It's his show.
That's why I'd say he'd be a dark horse, but I still think it's Zion.
If I had to pick a dark horse, I'd probably say Tyler Hero for the Miami Heat.
He's looked good.
Hero's come in and played really well. They love him in Miami. He's instant offense. He can knock down a three-point shot. He can get his own shot. He can score off the bounce as well, which I think was an underrated aspect of his game. And I think it's going to be a good situation as well, where he's going to get a lot of opportunities and maybe can impress some people. And I think he's a guy maybe that if Zion is out for maybe an extended period of time with this injury, maybe he's a guy that early on in the season can make an impression and slide in there.
And he's playing alongside Jimmy Butler, where he's not going to be the focal point. RJ Barrett will be the defensive game plans will be centered around him.
And so will Zion.
Yeah, and you can't, when you got Jimmy Butler and you got some of the other pieces Miami has, it's going to be easier for him to make a mark.
Definitely. Now we're looking at most improved player now, and this is always a really difficult one to forecast. If we get this right, maybe we should go play the lottery because you never really know. Yeah. It all depends on a guy who has an expanded role. All depends on a guy who's just getting more opportunities than he had been. Last year's winner, Pascal Siakam, I believe, right? Yeah, yep. Pascal Siakam, who we saw how great he was in the finals against Golden State.
Over D'Angelo Russell.
Which was interesting because he had a phenomenal year as well.
Exactly. I was surprised about that.
Last year there were a lot of guys last year who really had great performances.
I think if the Raptors don't make that playoff run because the Nets got bounced in round one, I think it would have went the other way. But
who's your pick for most improved player?
All right, I might get ridiculed for this, especially at the end of the year, but from what I've seen out of Orlando, I think Markelle Fultz.
Okay, I like that.
He's been, on all accounts, he's healthy again. He's confident mentally. He's all right. The syndrome, I forget the name of it, but that's kind of
afflicting his shoulder.
Yeah, come down, and he's really done some good things in camp and preseason. He's not going to be a 3-point shooter, but they've liked the way his ability to drive and then kick out. The Terrence Ross kick out. You got Aaron Gordon there, Nick Vukovic, who they're kind of be taking the defensive game plan, their focal points. And you could really surprisingly see Markelle Fultz come out and progress, at that. They need a point guard up.
And he's going to have an opportunity to play his game.
And the NBA wants that. Number one overall pick, they don't want to bust. Like, I think if they see Markelle Fultz, come into his own, 15 points a game, something like that, play well, accept an assist, they could really give it to him just because of how low he was.
That's
the Sixers traded him for Jonathan Simmons.
Yeah.
Jonathan Simmons, I think he was playing in the Big Three.
He might have been.
Yeah,
he might have been.
So, number one overall pick that fall from grace. If he could come up, I'd say most improved player.
I'm going to give you two guys, and if I have to definitively pick one, I'm probably going to pick the second one of these two. I'm going to say, the first one. I'm going to have my definitive one, and then maybe another guy who we can throw into the mix. I think Caris LeVert of the Nets, especially this year with who's going to be that second option on the Nets. Who's going to be the guy to play alongside KD or Kyrie while KD is currently disposed, unable to play? They're going to need another guy to step up. And I think Caris LeVert's another guy on that same Nets team last year with D'Angelo Russell that was very impressive. He was playing great basketball before he got hurt. I believe a month or so into the season, broke his ankle, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
He had a really bad lower leg injury. I believe it was an ankle injury. And it kind of derailed a really promising season for him. I think him back healthy in a new role where he's going to be the second option on this team for this coming season. I think Caris LeVert's a guy that could be the most improved player. He can shoot the jumper outside. He can get to the rim. He can put the ball on the floor. He can really do all the kind of things you want. But if I had to pick a second player who could be the most improved in the 2019-2020 season, this is another guy who's kind of looking to greener pastures, a new opportunity. I think Lonzo Ball. With a new change of scenery, not as much hype on you as there is in LA, not as much expectations playing in your hometown. I think him going to New Orleans, a team that doesn't have a lot of expectations, but a team that he can just kind of do his thing with not the spotlight on him of LA, and playing with guys that he's played with in the past, but also playing with new guys like Zion Williamson. I think Lonzo Ball's a guy that he's changed his shot around this offseason. He seemed to have pushed his dad to the side a little bit, and also kind of gotten out of the way of the whole Ball family brand, which I think was a good decision overall.
And
I think Lonzo Ball's a guy.
Low key, the Pelicans they've got a good roster.
They do.
I think the JJ Redick
as well, who for his assist numbers is going to do wonders.
Yeah, and it just opens the floor. They're not going to ask him to come in and play a lot of defense. That was the problem when he was on the Sixers. He was just getting exposed defensively. And Drew Holiday, another guy who's really can kind of take him under his wing, a vet, someone who I feel like they have a similar
another great defender.
Yeah, a similar skill set and style of play. So I mean, yeah, I could see both. I could Levert on that Nets team. He really, the Nets look good in the playoffs against the Sixers. So,
definitely.
I could see both of them.
All right, MVP, the big one, the big daddy. Before we talk about who we think is going to end up in the finals in June.
Only 11 players have repeated MVP in NBA history. Jordan was one of them.
In back-to-back years.
Yeah, in back-to-back years. Giannis. He's going to be the 12th. I see it. I just think he's just too good. He's too dominant. The Bucks are improved. They're going to probably have the best record in the NBA again. It's going to be. I just don't see how it could. If he's healthy, if he's doing what he's doing, how it could be anybody else.
And the other big thing that you're looking at is are guys going to have the highlights? Are guys going to have? Do they have the name recognition? Well, I think no one has a more recognizable name, maybe outside of LeBron in the NBA right now, than Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think that's pretty standoutish for him.
Yeah.
But I think, definitely. You look at the way he played last year; he was phenomenal. 27 points, 12.5 rebounds, just under 6 assists. And 58% from the floor is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think Giannis, that's a great pick.
Yeah.
It's a great pick. My pick is a guy who's not going to do it in back-to-back years, but I think he's going to be a repeat MVP. And I think it's a guy that, like his team, a lot of people maybe aren't looking out for this year. I'm going to say Steph Curry.
Okay.
I think Steph Curry kind of fell to the wayside in terms of people kind of forgot just how good he is. He dealt with some nagging injuries and stuff throughout the last few years. We saw flashes of him and his, how his hero ball, how good he can be as a singular player in the finals when KD was hurt, when Clay was hurt. It was all Steph. I think now, with the shadow of KD out from behind him, playing now with a new teammate, D'Angelo Russell, who I think will defer to him as opposed to Steph deferring to KD. I think Steph Curry is going to have a monster season. I think he's going to shoot the lights out of the ball as he always does. I think averaging 30 points per game is not out of the realm of possibility. And I think especially without having Clay, he's going to be relied upon more to knock down shots and just run their whole offense. I think Steph Curry wins MVP once again.
I could see him easily being the scoring leader this season.
That too.
And I see where I go, I think it's more likely I'd see him being scoring leader and not MVP. That's a really weird situation. It doesn't happen a lot, but
but it does.
It does, but yeah, I could see where he leads the league in scoring. Giannis MVP, but hey, that's just our picks. So
I like
we'll
it.
See.
I like it. Kind of curious who last season was the leader in scoring. Yeah,
was it Harden?
I believe it was. As we quickly, it was James Harden.
Yep.
It was James Harden, but didn't win the MVP.
Exactly.
So it happens, but it is rare. But I like Steph Curry though. I think he's gonna have. Do we have a dark horse for the MVP? I think Embiid's a guy.
Yeah.
I think Embiid, if he stays healthy, I think he has a good year. I think Embiid can certainly be an MVP candidate.
I just don't. With Simmons, I just don't think he's gonna put up the numbers,
sure.
MVP numbers. I think he's gonna be very good. So yeah, Embiid's a good dark horse. I'd say Harden. He.
Yeah. I mean, Harden is always a candidate.
He's still coming out. I could say James Harden.
And I think the other obvious guys are Kawhi, LeBron.
Yeah.
Maybe even Anthony Davis because he's playing with another top 5 player first time ever. I think Anthony Davis guy could really benefit. But we've seen how big men play when they team up with LeBron. Their numbers go down.
Exactly.
Whether it was Chris Bosh, Kevin Love, whoever it is. So maybe it works kind of the opposite of how it's been in the past for Anthony Davis. All right, prediction time. Who goes to the NBA Finals and who wins it?
Bucks, Clippers. I think the Clippers make some moves at the trade deadline. Get a big guy like a Marc Gasol. Kevin Love's going to be on the market. I know Blake Griffin. They're going to get some kind of inside presence. Reach the finals. Meet the Bucks. Milwaukee in 6. I'll go Milwaukee in 7 just because of the Kawhi Leonard effect.
I like it. I think, as much as I like the Clippers, I think it is going to end up being the Los Angeles Lakers in the finals. And I'm going to say...
Lake Show. It's back.
I'm going to agree. I think they're going to take on the Bucks. I think the Bucks are probably the most complete team in the Eastern Conference. I think they're clearly the favorite to get there.
Yeah, I don't see the Sixers beating them.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
They don't have enough of a bench.
And I don't see anyone else really coming out of the woodwork in the East to beat up the Bucks. But I think it is the Lakers, and I think the Lakers beat the Bucks. I think LeBron gets another one, adds to his legacy, adds to it in L.A., and I think Anthony Davis gets his first title as well. But I don't know how much of a bold... These are two like these.
That's your bold prediction?
That is not my bold prediction.
Mine is actually the opposite.
All right, what's your bold prediction?
That the Lakers implode in the second half and they struggle down the stretch. They get hit by the injury bug. These Band-Aids that they got on the bench. Rondo start having issues. So I'm going to go in the I think they can make the playoffs. I'm just saying I think that they take a step behind in the second. They go down in the second half of the season, and then Anthony Davis is a little more reluctant to re-sign.
I think what the biggest thing is for the Lakers is that LeBron had an entire offseason from the end of the regular season to just do nothing, to relax, to recuperate, to refill the tank. And I think this is the first time in 10 years he didn't play all the way until June.
He's added,
and he had some of those
a season.
And he had some of those. Yeah, exactly.
Games.
And he's had some of those Olympic games in there as well when he played for Team USA. He's played a ton of basketball over the last decade. Yeah. And while other guys are just if there's the one positive of not making the playoffs, it's that you're not playing basketball for another 3 months.
Right.
So, and especially for a guy like LeBron, at his age, he's like 34, 35, he's going to be 35 this season, I believe.
Yeah.
He needs all the time he can get. And I think it's big for him going into this season with a new team, teaming up with Anthony Davis in LA and trying to go for another push for a title. I think it was huge for him that he basically could just chill all the way since March or whatever it was and not have to play basketball deep into June.
Yeah, and I think just the fact that he has Anthony Davis, someone who's a reliable star, I'd say, and not this group of young players could make a difference. But I don't see it right now.
I think
and my other major Ben Simmons is going to start hitting threes. That's my other.
So here's
bold prediction.
What? Give me a percentage.
I'd say I wouldn't go plus. I'd say 33%. 30 to 33, which I'm telling you, this guy hadn't made a 3-point shot until the preseason.
Yeah.
So he's not gonna be putting up Landry Shamet numbers 45% from three, but I could see him, hitting 30%.
So I have two predictions. Okay, I don't know how bold the first one is. I think Devin Booker makes the All-Star team. That's a very bold prediction. But I think Devin Booker, a guy who he got so much flack and got torched on Twitter and everywhere for complaining about double teams. But I think he's a guy that playing now alongside Ricky Rubio, how we just bashed Ricky Rubio 15 minutes ago talking about the Jazz. I think Ricky Rubio is going to be good for him because they have actually a legitimate point guard to play alongside Devin Booker. A guy who can feed him the ball, get him the ball off of screens, let him catch and shoot, and take the ball out of his hands because we know that's not Devin Booker's necessarily. He's not a distributor. He is a scorer through and through. He's a throwback player in that aspect. Probably more fit better in the early 2000s than he does now. But I think he makes an all-star team, and I think he could lead the league in scoring this year as well. My second bold prediction, or do you want to rebuttal that?
No, I mean, that was my exact point with Rubio is the fact that he's not a guy who creates his own shot, which is why on that Jazz team, Jazz needed someone like that.
But I think he's exactly...
So now he's the exact fit for Devin Booker. So I agree with you on that. Yeah, in terms of just, a true point guard, get him the ball, off pick and pop, that kind of thing.
My other bold prediction, he's only done this... I'm really not going to count it because he did it in his first season in the league and he barely took any threes, and I'm going to say Giannis Antetokounmpo shoots...
You got that name down.
Right?
Pat.
Giannis
I don't even go for the last name.
Yeah. I think Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak, shoots 35% from three or better. I really do.
All right.
And now he took just under 3 a game last year. He shot 26%.
Yeah.
I think he spent all offseason working on it. He just gets better and better. He was your MVP pick.
Yeah.
I'm going to say he shoots around 35% from three. He shot 34.7 in his rookie season, but he took 1.5 a game.
Yeah.
Okay. So
let's get Ben and him in the 3-point contest.
That would be incredible to watch, and we'll throw Dwight Howard in there too.
Yeah.
Or we'll let Shaq come off in his suit and do it
no doubt.
from the TNT set. But I'm gonna say he shoots around 35% from three and completely adds to his game. And this is the year that he takes that next step and adds that aspect of his game. You look at basketballreference.com, which first shout out to them for all the stats and all the stuff they do. I think every basketball show in the country uses their stuff.
Yeah.
They're projecting him to shoot 28% from three. I think he can.
7 more. See 7.
I think he shoot around 35.
Okay.
I'm just going to guess.
Even with Korver, that designated 3-point shooter, they're not going to be asking him to do
Like
that.
I said, it was a bold prediction.
Okay.
And I think he's going to try and prove something this year, similar to how Ben Simmons is trying to do it.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. That is our NBA preview for the 2019-2020 season. I'm Cale Berger. He's Chris Mueller. We thank you for checking us out, and make sure you like and subscribe. Helps us out a lot on YouTube. Follow along with whatever we're doing here at Pittsburgh Sports Live. Also, follow us on Twitter at Pittsburgh Sports Live. Follow me at Twitter at Cale_Berger. Follow him at @ByChrisMueller as well to follow along with us, whether it's all of our pit coverage, our basketball coverage,
Complaining about the Eagles.
or just lamenting about the Eagles, or random ramblings that we have throughout the week, and follow along with us there. But that's our NBA preview, and we'll talk to you next week. This has been another edition of The Corner 3 on Pittsburgh Sports Live.